before we start episode 198 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I am not your host tonight, Howard Kravitz. I do want to promote very quickly our shows coming up for the Breeders' Cup in the next few days because we have a tremendous amount of coverage for the Breeders' Cup. The HHH Racing Podcast is a place that you do not want to miss. As you can see right now, we're going to bring up here on the screen the shows coming up right now. Here they are. On Monday, our next show will be Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. It'll be our post position draw analysis. The post positions are going to be drawn at, I believe, 2:30 Eastern Standard Time on Monday, and Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. We're going to go an hour early so that we don't bump into Monday Night Football. We'll be talking about who got the best and worst of the post position draws with our entire expert panel will be with us. Then also on Monday at some point, I'll be releasing the taped show that I'm doing about the BC contest with last year's champ Matt Miller and an excellent player and also champion in his own right, Marshall Graham. If you are interested in the BC contest, whether you're playing in it or live money contests in general, that is a show you're not going to miss. That is a taped show, but I will release that Monday. And then, of course, Tuesday will be our Breeders' Cup Friday show with Justin Christine of In the Money Media and Trip Note Pros at our standard time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, Chad Schexnader of the Fairgrounds Racing Podcast will be here for the huge championship day of Breeders' Cup Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, these are podcasts you absolutely do not want to miss. But without further ado, let me toss it to tonight's host of the HHH Racing Podcast, from the East Coast and back from his wonderful trip at Disney World. Let's bring in Pete Visco. Pete, how you doing tonight?
Hello, Howard, and I assume
away,
goodbye,
sir.
Howard. Yes, sir.
Yeah, take it away, sir. It is all yours. Have a great show. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, Howard. As he said, welcome to episode 198 of the HHH Racing Podcast. Again, as Howard mentioned, I'm your host, Pete Visco, for tonight. We're going to take a little quick break from Breeders' Cup talk, and we're going to dive into, everybody needs to build a bankroll for upcoming Breeders' Cup week. So we're going to dive into the late pick 5 at Santa Anita on Saturday. It's actually a really good card. Some good graded stakes races, a bunch of stakes races, some actually really cool horses are running that weren't good enough to maybe make the Breeders' Cup, but there's some good horses. But before we get to that, let's do a couple quick administrative items. If you're watching on YouTube, especially this week, because I feel like we're going to get a lot of viewers for our Breeders' Cup shows, but even tonight, if you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button in the bottom right. That just lets you know and lets YouTube know that, hey, I want to be a part of this podcast going forward. Also, smash that like button, hit that thumbs up on all of our pods. That lets YouTube know that you like us and we're a really good podcast for you to listen to. And finally, hit that notification bell. As Howard mentioned, we're going to be doing, especially for the Breeders' Cup, we're going to be off our normal schedule. So if you don't want to miss any of them, hit that notification bell. Then you'll be notified when our new pods come up, and that's good for Breeders' Cup week and going forward. Next, we're also going to, if you are a audio listener instead of the visuals on YouTube, please subscribe, rate, review, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Anchor, whatever service you use. Please be sure to do that. That also, we appreciate the audio listeners as much as the video watchers. Also, on Howard's was up there, our Twitter handle, @HKravets, HKRAVETS. That's Howard's personal Twitter, but it's also the Twitter handle for the HHH Racing Podcast. So be sure to give us a follow on there as well. We appreciate that, and we like to interact with our viewers and guests as much as possible. Next, the Power Picks. So please, especially this week, and Howard mentions this on all our shows, we're only $15.99 a month, and you receive our Power Picks every Saturday. And for the Breeders' Cup specifically, we're going to be doing sort of a blowout edition. It's going to cover all the Breeders' Cup races on Friday and Saturday, in-depth analysis of every horse, bets for every race, grids for all the horizontals. Myself, Howard, Paul, and Kyle are all going to participate. So below the video player, there's a link to Patreon. You can click there to subscribe. Or if you want to go to our website and just take a look at past Power Picks, our website is hhhracingpodcast.com. If you go there, there's a link again to subscribe through Patreon, but there's also an example of past Power Picks, so you can get a feel for the type of information we provide, the type of winners that we've been giving out lately, which has been great. So please do that. This is, again, if you do it now, you'll have it for next week's Breeders' Cup Blowout edition. You don't want to miss that for sure. So without further ado, we don't want to take up too much time. I'm going to bring on my guests, my guests, I should say, my co-hosts, not guests. They're not that special. So I'm going to bring on my co-host to talk through this late pick 5 at Santa Anita. First, from the Saratoga Special, Paul, no sleep till the Breeders' Cup Halloran. And the Arlington Park Special, Kyle, all in on Cave Rock Roscoe. How's it going, fellas?
Good. I like that type. I like that intro. That's a good one. I like that.
You like that one a little bit better? Yeah, until Cave Rock goes down, then we delete this from all.
Well, I like him, so of course that's going to happen.
Yes. How's it going, Paul? What's happening?
It's going great. I was remiss in not watching Howard's show with Davey Lane live, but I will be watching it after this show and taking assiduous notes on the Euros. I find with the Euros, the more people from over there you can listen to, the better, because at some point you're going to hear the same thing from a few different people. And, let's face it, we don't follow those horses as closely as we follow our horses, and they're a major part of this event. So,
I think that's good too. And I think too, with for our listeners and viewers, I think it's important, because a lot of people are intimidated, and we don't want to get off on a tangent, but a lot of people are intimidated by the foreign horses sometimes, just because their PPs aren't as easily readable, and maybe some of their races they're accessible, but it's a pain in the neck. You got to dig and you have to find them. So I think listening to other people who know these horses the same way we know our U.S. horses, like Paul said, it's all the better. I mean, anytime you can do that, I think it's great. So please, everybody, watch that one. It's been posted. It was earlier this afternoon. It got some great viewership. It's Howard and Davey Lane going through all the Euro Breeders' Cup horses. So definitely check this out. But for now, let's jump in. Let's get to the late pick six. Actually, the pick 6 is a good idea too at Santa Anita from what I read on Saturday, but we're only going to hit the late pick 5. So we're going to start with race 6. And actually, I know Howard's behind the scenes, but he is going to, usually Howard does this, but I'm going to do it today. So let's go. Race number 6, fellas. We are going to talk about the Golden State Juvenile Filly Stakes. It's a purse of $175,000 for California breds, 7 furlongs on the dirt. The favorite, as you all can see there, is the number 2, Chismosa. I assume I'm saying that correctly, at 9-5. And we have one scratch, Easy Ferris, the 5 horses scratch. So it's a pretty short field. So we're going to start this one. I guess, Kyle, why don't you start us off? We're gonna go away. So I see you and Paul. I went with the favorite on top, but you and Paul did not. So Kyle, what did you like about the 7 cast member? And let's bring up the PPs and take a look.
And this one was, for me, this was all replays in this one. Second time out for Tim Yachtine. Got John Velasquez up the first time up in his maiden. I usually am not one for horses right off breaking their maiden and doing something they haven't done before, which is he is stretching out a little bit, still going one turn, but going full length of the chute at 7 furlongs. This horse was just 4 wide the entire race through the turn and just made that big sweeping move and kept down with it really impressively, at least through the video. Not the highest of figures, but that big sweeping move, especially as his first race as a 2-year-old, that's what really turned me onto this horse, and I'm going to take a shot. I figured the 2 would be the favorite, which I won't take away your thunder, Pete, but just improving buyers the entire way through, which I know is a big tick in the right box for you. But like I said, I love that type of move, and going 4 wide, the Santa Anita track is fast, as we all know, but I'm going to take a little bit of a price with who Baffert gave all his horses to, Mr. Tim Yakteen.
Yeah, and it's funny because I everybody can now see if you wanted to read them, if you were that bored, you can see my notes. But when I watched that replay, the same, it was that wide sweeping move. And I thought it was a really confident ride by Velasquez.
Mm-hmm.
Like he rode this horse like it was the best horse. And it was a 5-1 shot. So it wasn't like a layup. So I definitely like that as well. And the other thing we talk about, we sometimes get, I think this is probably a good lesson all the time. We look at the buyers and you see you got a 61, or she got a 61, I should say. And you say, that's a little bit low, but not for, hold on. Cheers for the early mistake. So, but if you look at the favorite who's 9-5, her opening buyer was only a 55, but she's surpassed that since. But we forget that, hey, in their first race, you compare it against first races, not against maybe where the horse is now. I think sometimes we maybe make that mistake. Actually, why don't you go ahead, Kyle, since you have the 2 in second, I'll let you talk about the favorite quick, just because, I mean, on paper, this horse hasn't done anything wrong. So what were your thoughts? And I assume you still think of this one as definitely a potential winner since you have it in second.
Oh, definitely. And this horse has been, like you said, has done absolutely nothing wrong in his first 3 her first 3 starts. I did it too. Drink again. But back-to-back listed state bred stakes. I mean, winning pretty easily. I mean, down the stretch of last time at Del Mar, got up to 6th and was just, she didn't really look like she was pressing too hard going down to the final towards the wire, kind of geared down per se. Work tab is still really good on this horse. This horse is definitely up there for sure. And this race looks like it's going to shape up for another hot pace as well. So that's definitely another reason like this horse is you look with all those red numbers in the first 3 starts. I mean, it looks to set up exactly like that race again. I'm not sure if you saw that the same way.
Yeah, no, I did. And I actually like, as you could see on the screen by the bulls, this horse has actually beat a bunch of the others in this race already in her short career. The one thing, as people could see again in my notes, the one thing that threw me as maybe not a lock, De Leon, 1 for 37 with domestic shippers to Santa Anita, and 0 for 12 with 2-year-olds at Santa Anita. So that's why I was looking at it going, maybe this one isn't a complete lock. Plus the jockey's 1 for 17. So if you're looking to beat this horse, maybe those are some reasons. But let's go to another one. Paul, you have the 6, Sell the Dream on top. What were your thoughts on this one? This one's coming off the turf onto dirt and hasn't been on the dirt in a few races.
Yeah. I think the 7 furlongs is a bit of a factor here. I think it's a big unknown for everyone except the 6. I'm sure the others will probably be able to get it, but maybe, probably. I don't mind the turf to dirt because it's a Munnings. So obviously the dirt is not going to be a problem being a Munnings. One of my favorite angles in handicapping is a 7 furlong race playing a cutback. And in this case, it's a cutback from a mile, and it's turf to dirt, as I said, doesn't bother me. Berrios is riding pretty well. He's 15%, but you can see he's got a bunch of seconds as well.
Yeah.
And I, again, I looked at the 2, and as you said, Pete has done nothing wrong, but I don't know. And one other factor on the 6, the fact that the 2 stakes races she is coming out of were open company, not state breds. So this is obviously a California bred race. I think that's an advantage. We see it a lot with New York bred races. We'll have another New York Showcase Day on Sunday. So
that's a good call.
I landed on the 6.
And if you look, actually, Comanche Country, who she lost to in both of those races, is actually going in the Breeders' Cup. So that's I think as of right now, that might be the horse that I either like and as one of my top 2 choices. So I know that that's a quality horse. So it was losing to someone of pretty high quality and not a horse that's just going to the Breeders' Cup with no chance to win. So I think that's a good call there. You mentioned the 2, Paul. Any other thoughts on the 2, or you just like the 6 better at this point, or did you see any sort of chinks in the armor of the 2?
No, the stats that you mentioned are certainly a factor. The trainer is an under 10% trainer. People love to bet the ones. I think if this horse is going to be a decent favorite, I'm all in and trying to beat her.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you want to quickly hit on the 1? You have a long shot in third, the 1, Charlie. I assume, at 15-1. Any thoughts here? This one has actually run against a few others in the race as well and lost, but has been relatively competitive, and you're getting a price. What were your thoughts on the
Yeah,
run?
that was my thinking. It'll be a price because she's a maiden in a stakes race. She's run 3 pretty good races. The thing I liked also, Pete, is she's taken money every time.
Yep.
So that means you could go broke betting her on the win end. But if she can, if you were playing someone to get in the exacta or trifecta at 10 or 15-1 with those kind of running lines, I'm good with that.
Yeah, and in a small field, you can even go cold if you like the top 2 choices that you have. The only other one I'll talk about quickly is the 4 Big Celebration. It's the one that I have in second. This one lost in its opening race, in its debut, as you can see here, lost to cast member and Charlie, but was knocked around out of the gate. If you want to watch a replay, we're not going to necessarily do a replay on this one, but it was knocked around out of the gate, dropped way back, and was still running late, which is impressive for a first-time starter, just because usually if they get banged around, maybe they just give it up because, they're not used to it at that point, and then came out and just dominated a field in their second race. Now, it wasn't the best of fields, but still, to win by 7, going away, bet down like that, and since then has worked, has that beautiful 47-2 4 furlong work on the 24th. So I think this one, maybe if you look at that first race, maybe you get a little bit more of a price because that first race wasn't that great. But that second one, maybe this one just sort of found their form. So I'm on those. I think it's a pretty wide open race unless you just love the 2 and think the 2 can't lose. But I think there's some reasons to go against it. And anytime you can go against a favorite, that can be helpful. So let's jump to race 7. This is the grade 2 Twilight Derby. We have purse of $200,000 for 3-year-olds, and it's 1.125 miles on the turf. And we have a field of 9, and the favorite is the number 9 all the way on the outside, War at Sea. But we also have it's pretty evenly spread, which I like. So this looks like a pretty good betting race. So let's go to Paul. Why don't you start us off on this one? You have the 8 on top, Speaking Scout from Graham Motion. What are your thoughts on this one? And I will bring up the PPs for us.
Yeah, the safest bet of the day, Pete, was me picking the Graham Motion horse, who was coming from the Midwest and the East Coast and the Midwest, going on
going
turf,
out west,
heading west. Yeah, I'm the Horace Greeley theory. No, but really, I think you look at this horse. Really a good race at Kentucky Downs, 1 5/16, and was right there, and understandably ran out of gas. That's quite a long way. And we'll let the math teacher tell us later on how many 8ths 5/16 is. It's probably it's probably 2.5 8ths, but I'm not sure. And then comes back, and this was the horse that decided the contest, Heil, that you guys were in.
That's correct.
This is the horse that decided it
Mm-hmm.
because the guy who finished second had this horse and got moved up because the winner was DQ'd. He was all in on this horse to win, right?
Correct. Yep, that's exactly right. What? Yeah, and Howard and I were both against him that day, but that's about right. That
and he won by 5. What a shocker that you were against. Yeah,
plays par for the course, especially on that day.
Yeah, I think he's in pretty good form, Pete. And again, I'm always looking on turf. I'm looking for horses heading in that direction. That's why I have the 3 second. The 3 was an East Coast horse, and since he got to the West Coast, second, fourth, and first in 3 races. So, and the 8 picks up Hernandez, who's one of the better jockeys out there. So yeah, I like the 8 quite a bit here.
Yeah, no, I could see that. The only thing I saw, I'll go back to the 8 really quickly. The one thing I noted, and again, I think I sometimes notice this maybe more than others, so some people don't care as much. The only 2 wins, or 3 wins that this horse has have all been with Lasix, and in this race, there are no Lasix. Now, again, that may mean absolutely nothing because this horse is run. It's run a couple of good races. It's run good races without Lasix, but it just so happens that the wins were all with Lasix. So whether you care about that or not, just something I wanted to point out to make sure in case people missed that. But I do think that horse looks pretty good. So I think in an even race like this, and you should be able to hold on to that price as well, which would be decent in a pick 5. So you were talking, you said in second you have the 3 Perfect Flight at 6-1. What are your thoughts here? Peter Miller has this horse now in the last 3.
Right, and Miller has this horse in this race, and Vasquez is pretty good. Again, the horse is jumping up into his stakes, but that was a really good effort at Del Mar in the Grade 3 La Jolla. Did lose to a horse that's in this race, the 5 Cabo Spirit, who he's going to have to deal with again. But I think the 3, I believe he has the best last race figure. Pretty sure the 92 is the best last race figure. So again, a horse that's in form, even though he's jumping up in class, I think he's proven he can run at this level, and I used him second.
Yeah, I thought it was a weird choice when I looked at the PPs initially. I thought that first race when Miller picked him up and threw him in a Grade 3 turf off of a maiden win, that was an odd choice, and he really acquitted himself quite well. And then they go right back to the dirt. So as people could see my notes, I said odd campaign since moving to Miller. I just thought that was a couple weird choices, but it's worked. This horse actually can run pretty well, apparently, on both surfaces, which is always pretty impressive. So I think this was one where I was down to a bunch of different horses, and I want to say I went a little bit deep in this one anyway. So I really like that one as well. Kyle, let's jump to you real quick. You have the 9. Who's the 5-2 favorite, War at Sea, for Ronald Ellis. What are your thoughts on this one? Why'd you put this one on top?
I mean, I just think this horse is in great form, and I think this horse gets the trip. I mean, I love that he's drawn outside. Granted, his figs are not as good as Paul said, like the 3 or something like that. But I mean, this horse has tactical speed. He gets Mike Smith back aboard the last 4 times. He's coming back. Or no, this is mile and 1/8, right? Yeah, mile and 1/8. Stays at the mile and 1/8 distance, which I think is the best distance for this horse. You can run back to his mile races. He's missing by head. He won by 3/4, but he was ahead coming down the stretch.
Yep.
I just think this horse sits the trip, gets a really good run at it on the outside, and hopefully gets in the clear.
Yeah, I had the same thought. I thought this one was versatile enough to maybe just sit right off the speed and then pounce from there. And the one thing you didn't mention was that 46-4 4 furlong work, which is at least this horse is showing that they're coming in fit. I mean, that's a pretty strong work, but I mean, this horse is fit coming in, so you have to be at least impressed with that and figure he's gonna run his race.
Well, and coming in with the form that he has, that 46-4 work only gets a little better, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then, so you have in second, we'll jump to the 5 Cabo Spirit, who again, this horse has run against some of the horses we've already spoken about. And coming in for George Papa, I like to call him, so I don't have to mispronounce the name too much. What are your thoughts on this one? I have this one in third as well, but was teetering on either second or first with this one.
Yeah, George Papadromo, man.
Yes,
It's a great name. But this is just a thing where I love this horse, and I was also teetering on what I wanted to do in this race. I just think the 9's going to sit the trip and get a little bit of a jump on the 5. That was my full.
That was it. Okay.
That was my full thing. But again, his figs are a little lighter, not by much, than the 9. They're pretty right on par, actually. But again, I just think the 9 sits the better trip, close to the pace. That's where there's not too much speed in this race. There are a few that when we go to the top, there will be a few going for the lead. Like I said, I think the 9 just sits a little bit closer and pounces quicker than the 5 does.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then the one thing with the 5 too, I thought in that last race, I had the nose one was swung way wide on the turn. So that was a pretty impressive close anyway, and sort of ran on at the end, but has also done well against some of the other horses in this race, and they were right there, War at Sea. So you're getting a little bit better price for a horse who has a great late kick. And we'll see again, if War at Sea gets the jump, then maybe you're a little bit of trouble. But if it heats up and this one, can come from the back and get some pace to run into, I feel like this is a good one to sort of roll by. Now you have and you also have Perfect Flight. So did you want to mention anything else on Perfect Flight, or you just sort of agree with what Paul was saying?
No, I agree with both of you, actually. I thought the campaign coming from, he's run as easily his best figures after coming over with Miller. So that's definitely something to note. But I also took to you as well. Throwing him right in the Grade 3 on the turf, running really well. next to Cabo Spirit at 13-1, but then he goes right back to the dirt and runs his 2 best figs. So
yeah, and an optional claimer too. So it was very weird to me, but he knows what he's doing, I guess.
No, I mean, he definitely knows more than me. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll jump real quick. The one horse that we haven't mentioned, do I have on top? And this is one that I think we touted on the show, maybe 2 back, and it had a really tough trip and still ran well to only lose by a nose, and then came back and won. And I think this is a horse me and Howard may have liked. So I like this one coming back. Again, I think it's obviously a bit of a step up. It's never been in a graded race. It's been running in optional claimers. But I just like that the form that this one is in since he's moved to the Miller barn. Again, we have another Miller horse here. Feel like with the closing kick, I feel like the distance, it has run at 1 1/8. So I think the distance should be this horse's friend. And again, it just seems to be in pretty top form, has paired up, not Beyer tops, but has paired up nice 86s. So maybe there's a little bit of a move forward there. 5 for 5 in the money at Santa Anita, only with the 1 win. But I still think that this horse is hopefully coming into his own a bit. And if we do get that pace, and real quick, let's talk about the pace, because we'll see if we do have some closers. So we'll have to see. So Paul, I don't know if you looked at the 2 Gojo 1, who's never run on the turf, but if you look at the time form US pace, a 121, which is much higher than every other horse in this field. So you think this one's going to set the pace, and we just hope that it can go out and run and then fades first time on the turf? What are your thoughts on this one? This was interesting to me.
Well, my thoughts are, if you look at the 2 Miller horses in their running styles, you can bet that the 3 is not going to let the 2 go alone.
Yep.
That's what I think. I think
that's a good point. Yeah,
I think that's what Miller is thinking here. So that might not be good for the 3 either, by the way. But I would not expect this 2 to be loping out there on the lead. I think Miller figures he sends the 3, probably can go by the 2 at some point, and then he's got to hold off his other horse. Now obviously the 9 will have something to say about that. That 9. That last race, the Del Mar Derby, where he ran 3rd, that was almost like a New York turf race. Slow Down Andy was moving to the turf from the dirt and kind of walked all the way around the track.
Yeah.
So no one was closing in that race. That was a good pick by my good friend, Dr. Jeff Mora. Loved Slow Down Andy that day. So, the 9, as Kyle says, should get a good trip as well. But yeah, I think it is going to be a fast pace, and I wouldn't think the 2 is going to be able to go too far alone with Miller having 2 horses in the race.
No, that's a good call, and I hope that works, because I think we all sort of lean to closers. By the way, from Uncle Howard for you, Paul, 5/16 is 2.58. So now I feel like somebody should get a calculator out and check that math, because Howard's been a little off this week. But
so Peter, everyone who thought Howard would contribute absolutely nothing to this show is wrong.
That was that's about his normal contribution, is mundane details anyway. So we figure might as well have this show be the same as any others. So all right, let's move on quickly to the 8th race. The 8th race. The Golden State Juvenile Stakes, another one, purse $175,000 for California bred males this time, so we don't screw up the gender for us here. And we're going 7 furlongs, and we will take a look at our picks quickly. There you go. And actually, look at us, all 4 of us. The favorite, Giver Not a Taker, 4 to 5, the number 4 horse. And as per our picks, we're all going that way for now. So, Paul, I'm going to start with you on this one. What do you think about this horse? Is this one just sort of a pick the 4 and move on kind of race? Or what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah. And Pete, the Jackie's Warrior connections, bred and owned by the Robesons. So that makes it pretty simple. But, the horse has the best number, ran in an open company turf stakes last time. You see that a lot with juveniles. They'll tend to throw them in races just to see if they can run in a turf. Those, we see it in New York all the time. Those races are worth a lot of money. This is a homebred for the Robesons, again, who are the Jackie's Warrior connections. And I think anything close to the race 2 back And this horse was a straight single for me in my caveman pick 5, and will be a lone A on my ABC.
Makes sense. Kyle, what are your thoughts? You agree with Paul on this one?
100%. I do
Yeah, there we
agree.
go. Drink, everybody.
Had to say
Drink.
it once. Had to say it once. But
Got
yeah,
to.
I mean, realistically, if you're just a Figs player alone, there's no one even close to that 81 that was
No,
running that last
we'll
race.
actually scroll through. I think we have a 67, 61, and then 59. I mean, there's not much. Yeah. So if we can run to that, yeah.
And if you watch that replay, I mean, granted, he got a really good trip that day, but it didn't, it doesn't look like it's not going to be a slow 81. He was driving past everybody with the old Arlington stomper for the Ravelli, Jose Valdivia. But so I had to throw that out there for all the Illinois people. But yeah, getting thrown on the turf, I agree with Paul. I just think it's, they're trying him out on the turf, want to see what he likes to do. But getting back to the dirt, which I think is his best surface, where I don't think he's going to get a bad trip literally at all with Figs that kind of lays over the field. Yeah, it was a straight single for me as well.
No, I agree. And actually, a couple quick things. Peter Miller, 25%, 61% turf to dirt with 2-year-olds. And the breeding on this horse, when you look at the horse itself, the breeding is all dirt. So I guess like Paul said, they just said, hey, screw it. We got some Kitten Joy's blood in there. Let's give it a shot, see what it's like on the turf. We'll throw it in, and now it's coming back and sort of lays over this field. Paul, we'll go back to you in case people, even though it was probably going to use this as singles, in case people are looking at this race as maybe something cold. You have a nice priced horse, the 5, Ship and Scam in second. What are your thoughts on this one? I assume this is just a pure underneath long shot play for you.
Yeah, it is, and it's a connection play with O'Neill and Gutierrez, and again, it's a maiden stepping up, and some of these state-bred stakes races, to some degree, are stakes races in name only. You know what I mean? Not to take anything away. Hey, it's nice if you own them, Pete, because they're running for $175,000.
I'll take it.
If you follow New York on Sunday, it's the another New York Showcase Day. You're going to see the same thing. All New York breds running for 75, 100, up to 200,000. So if you own them, it's great. But I think a maiden's ability to hit the board in a race like this is probably greater than obviously an open company race. It's the connections. I get the feeling based on the running lines that the 7 furlong. I think this horse probably the longer, the better. He's out of a mine shaft mare. So, it's strictly an underneath play. He'll be one of my horses under the 4.
Yeah, and actually, if you look in the 2 state-bred races, actually ran pretty well and then bombed out in more of the open company races. So I feel like this is a good one underneath. And then, Kyle, you have the 7 Merit Song. Another nice priced horse, 15-1 underneath. Again, I assume this is just a underneath play, but what'd you like about this one?
Yeah, and I mean, actually, it's pretty much the same reasons as Paul, just for a different horse. I mean, granted, I know people are going to be turned off by when he opens up at 30,000 at Los Al, but I mean, he wins next time out at Del Mar for 50. They move him up into open company optional claiming, runs a good second to Man Oh Man. And then he runs in the same, and then they throw him up in a state bred listed stake where Give or Not Taker, the 4 in this race, wins for fun, basically. And granted, he doesn't run very well, but pairs up his buyer top of 53, which in this race, I mean, that's pretty much par for the course.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a shot with 15-1. Hopefully he runs kind of right with Give or Not Taker, and then just is able to Give or Not Taker out finishes, and he just comes up for second.
No, I like that. And actually, I had to know when you watch the replay on that last one, hit the gate straight out of the gate, sort of bounce to the side a little bit. And again, especially when you have younger horses, you throw them off a little bit and it sort of screws their whole race up. This one then rushed up a little bit, which sort of maybe tires them out. And that's why it didn't have, any kind of kick at the end. So I could see this one for sure. Let me say so we'll go real quick. I had the 3 Mystic Flyer in second. This was actually similar to a horse I liked in the last one. The first race in his debut, he ran against Give or Not a Taker, was 18-1, awful trip, broke slow, was checked, basically dropped back to dead last, and then again ran on late, which I only find impressive just because, again, it's a debut horse, has a ton of trouble and doesn't give up doesn't sort of just, sit in the back and do nothing. This one ran on pretty well, and Give Her Not a Taker just ran away with it, which is why you see sort of that 11 length distance there, but then comes back, basically same company, pops a little bit of a better buyer, beats the field pretty nicely, sits off a hot pace. So I figure, again, if we're looking at this one, isn't as big of a price as the one you have, but hey, if you're looking for just a decent cold exacta or something, you're obviously going to get Give Her Not a Taker is going to probably be like 3 to 5, 2 to 5, who the hell knows. So if you can get something to sort of up the odds on that and play something cold, I'm okay with the 3 there. And then I guess the last one we'll talk about, since you and I both have it, I'll let you talk about him, Kyle, is the 6, Golf Drama. What are your thoughts on this one? This one's got ran against some other horses in the race and broke his maiden in some pretty good style last time out.
Yeah, and like I said, I know people, the low sal, whatever, it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. Wins easily by going away 5, geared down by 4. Pops a 61, not as much as his first race, which runs a 67. But, I mean, even at Santa Anita and Del Mar, I mean, he's still holding his own. The figs aren't there like the 4, but he's still holding his own against horses like Mystic Flyer. He lost to 2 back. He beat Midnight Lightning that's in this race. Again, it's just kind of the underneath plays that you're trying to find. I like the 7 just at a little bit of a bigger price.
Yeah.
But this horse has stayed with fast paces all through his 2-year-old campaign. So that's another thing to look at.
Yeah, and the one thing I actually like, this horse has been favored in all 3 races. So obviously there's something going on where this horse is appealing to people and keeps getting bet, and finally finally came through and actually let them cash some tickets in that last one. So I agree. I kind of like this one. That's why I had this one in 3rd. But, the 2nd or 3rd in this race is just sort of, who do I like underneath the 4? That's all I'm really going for there. You guys have any other thoughts? We're okay to move on to the next one. I think we actually hit most of them, of the pretty low ones
Only
in this one.
Pete, on your
go ahead,
3,
Paul.
you get a big jockey upgrade on your 3 as well. You're going to Hernandez.
You're right. Yeah, I did. Yes, that was, I mean, I love Hernandez. So anytime you can do that, that's a plus. And especially, again, I think this horse had an unlucky trip in the debut, and the last one was ridden maybe like the horse is supposed to be ridden, and sat close and was able to pounce. So, if this one takes a step forward, has a long way to go. I don't think it's getting to the 81 from a 51, but I think it can get easily into the 60s, hopefully, and that's easily good enough for 2nd in this one. All right, well, let's jump to the 9th here. So the 9th race, the Senator Ken Matty Stakes, purse of $100,000 for filly and mares 3-year-old and up, a mile and 6.5 furlongs on the turf. I can't speak for some reason. And the favorite, we have the number 3, Connie Swingle at 9 to 5. So let's see. We have, look at you guys going against the favorite. So Paul, I'll let you jump in on this one first. Talk about the 9, Amy C, which you and Kyle both put on top in this one. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's the right distance. It's D'Amato. It's Rispoli, who I believe is the best turf rider out there right now. Had a good win down the hill, 2 back with an 88 buyer. I think down the hill, being outside is a little bit of an advantage, even though you do have to take that little right-hand turn at some point. I think I'm only 2 deep in the race with the 2 logicals, so nothing too clever for me, but I do like the 9 better than the 3.
Looking at I could see our pick 5 tickets off screen, and I think we're all pretty much in lockstep here, as you could see on the scroll at the bottom as well. Paul, real quick on sort of a general question, for this odd configuration, the 6.5 at Santa Anita down the hill, do you generally look for a horse who's run over that configuration before and has some success, or does that not matter to you that much?
No, I think it matters. I think it's an advantage. I wouldn't necessarily not use a horse who hasn't, but we've seen it with Breeders' Cups out there, right? It's certainly an advantage because it's downhill. It's the right-hand turn. It's going over dirt on the turn. It's going.
Yeah.
You have to play a horse who's good going from turf to dirt because they do it mid race.
Mid race, and then dirt to turf too.
Yeah, exactly. But so and so the fact that this horse has a win, but Others, I believe others do as well. So it's not just him. But yes, I do think it
Yeah.
matters, Pete.
And then I do like you mentioned Rispoli, who's Rispoli is staying on and actually had the win 2 back. We'll go to Kyle quick. Kyle, any more thoughts on the 9, or do you want to just talk about the 3? You agree with Paul pretty much?
I mean, yeah, you guys took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, I love when horses run down the hill and they show that they can run down the hill really well. We all know it plays a lot longer for these mile horses coming in and popping his best buyer down the hill with Rispoli back up. I think it ticks every box for me.
And the only thing, not to be a broken record, the only one other thing to notice is, again, the 2, and this one's a little more pronounced. This one has run 2 good races where it's won, and both have been with Lasix, and now again doesn't have Lasix. And in the other 4, now I'm not saying that was the only reason, but they were all stakes races as well.
Yep.
And this one, it's very pronounced on the screen. So again, just something to note. And I did note that D'Amato, 33% win, 54% in the money at this configuration in non-graded stakes. So obviously he's comfortable with his horses here. But again, if that Lasix thing, if that's something you lean on or you're comfortable or don't care about, it's something to take a look at. Kyle, why don't you talk quick? We all have the 3 as well. The 3, Connie Swingle, sitting at 9-5. Seems like a pretty logical horse. What were your thoughts on this one?
I mean, that's exactly right. It's going to sit near the pace. He's, again, like I said, I love horses that have one come down the hill before. He's done it 3 times.
3 times, yeah.
She's done it 3 times. I did it again.
Drink.
But, yeah, 3 times in a row. Last time, best buyer out of a 90. Improving buyer. If you want to even look at that down the hill, every time it's improved at buyers by 6 and by 4, keeping with Kyle Frey. I mean, yeah, there's really nothing to not like about this horse for another D'Amato trainee.
No, I agree. Paul, any thoughts on the 3? Anything different?
No, I kept it simple in the pick 5, Phil. Pete, I went with the 2 D'Amatos and moved on. He's very. You mentioned the stat, but you could do a lot of different stats of D'Amato in Southern California, especially on turf, and he's going to come up with pretty gaudy numbers.
Yeah, and he's like the Chad Brown of the West, where you'll look at these turf races and he's always got like 2, 3, 4 horses in it. So it's really just choosing between them. And I like what you said, Kyle. In this horse's 4 turf races, the buyers improved every single time. Now the last one was a little bit of a smaller jump, but now you're in the 90s. That's pretty impressive. Real quick, I have Kyle, you and I have the 1 in 3rd Freedom Flyer at 4-1. Any thoughts on this one? I know none of us are going to put this one in our pick 5, but any thoughts on this one on the win end, or is this purely sort of an exotic, maybe underneath exacted trifecta kind of horse?
I mean, it could definitely be an underneath horse. I think it's going to sit the same path as the 3, just obviously more on the inside. I talked about how good distance horses usually are on the downhill course, and running his best race in a while on the downhill last time out with Hernandez, gets Hernandez back up. Again, I just think the 3 is a better horse who sits the same trip he will. So I think he's just going to go past him, and the 1 maybe holds for 3rd, but that's kind of the way I saw it.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot, where if there's 2 horses in a race that sort of do the same thing, it's generally you lean to the better one, because if they both run their race, the better horse is most likely going to come ahead. Paul, real quick, you have the 2 Lexington Humor. Really quickly, any thoughts on this one? Again, this one looks like it has some speed. This is an interesting one because it's had 4 races, 2 on the turf, 1 on the dirt, 1 on the synth. So they're trying everything out and has actually been pretty successful on all of them.
Yeah, and again, you get $100,000 race that you think a horse has a shot. You go in. No, I'm a big Jonathan Wong guy. He's a guy who's made the transition from Northern California. He still runs up there, but he has run more and more in Southern California. I think he does a great job. This horse is fresh. He won his debut, which obviously he was fresh then. Won his debut.
There it is.
She won her debut by 7.5, and I kind of like that. The fact that she is coming off a layoff, and I think despite that she hasn't, she's only run down the hill once and gave it up a little bit. That was her 2nd career start. She had some pretty good stamina work. She's got 2 coming off 2 5 furlong works, and I think she will be able to get the distance. And lastly, the practical jokes are running okay. So
Yeah, they're pretty good. I mean, and especially if you keep them at the sprint distances, they're solid. Once you try
Right.
stretching them out, potentially that's where you lose them. All right, let's move to the last race in the sequence. Another grade at stakes, the grade 3 autumn miss stakes, purse 100,000 for 3-year-old fillies, and we're going a mile on the turf. And we have 12 horses, nice big field, and the favorite is the number 10, Cairo Memories at 8-5. And for us, I'm going to go to Kyle first on this one. Kyle's going with the 3, Pammy's Ready on top at 5-1, trying to take down that nice D, who I think is going to be a pretty solid chalk based on just form and figures in Cairo Memory. So what do you like about this 3?
Yeah, I had the 10 on top the whole way through, and I was like, you know what? We're going for it all.
I like
but
it.
The 10 easily is the class in the race. We'll get to it as we scroll down. But just this horse has since coming into Peter Miller's care, just steadily increasing the whole way up, has a lot of tactical speed. Raced down the hill her last time out. Obviously, we, like I said earlier, the down the hill horses usually are better at longer distances. This horse is actually coming from sprint, but you look back in her form, and she has 2-mile races at Santa Anita. One, she was out in the lead, and one, she kind of faded the second time, losing to another horse in this race, Lucky Girl. But I think just sitting the tactical speed trip in this race, going back around 2 turns, I think this horse definitely has a shot. Maybe, again, you can argue that the 10 is a lot more classy, but just the increasing buyers is enough for me to take a shot at 5-1.
No, it makes sense. I think the only thing that you actually mentioned exactly what sort of threw me off this horse. I have this one when we get to our pick 5 tickets. I actually have this one on the ticket, but the few fades at the mile, even in the win, was sort of just trying to give it up late and just didn't get caught. That was the one thing that sort of concerned me on the win end, that maybe this one's just better sprinting. So that's why when I was trying to decide, I think when I took my first pass, I might have had like 6 horses flagged in this one. I thought it was pretty wide open. But
that's fair.
But again, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and actually in the last race, granted that she was 20-1, but she finished just a neck behind Connie Swingle, who's looking to be the pretty decent favorite, or one of the decent favorites in the race previous to this.
In the prior, yeah. No, I like, and especially so if you're betting that race, maybe if Connie Swingle looks really good, maybe you move up Pammy's Ready a little bit in the 10th. And if Connie Swingle gets beat pretty badly, maybe you move that one back a bit. But that's more for, the individual race players as opposed to the pick 5 players. Paul, since you have this horse on top as well as I do, let's talk about the 10 Cairo Memories, the 8-5 favorite. Does this think this one just looks, on form and sort of class, this one looks pretty good?
Yeah, Pete, I couldn't get by. I'm a big company line guy, and I'm looking at McCulloch, Consumer Spending, With the Moonlight, Spenderella, who unfortunately I think is hurt now.
Yeah.
They shipped this horse east to run in the 1.25 mile, Belmont Oaks, went to the lead, which, she couldn't go the 10 furlongs, but she's only going to go 8 furlongs here. I think she's going to be tough. I did not single. I used the 1 as well, only because it's a Euro. So obviously it's a Euro coming over on turf. You always have to give a look, and it's picks up Rispoli, and should get a great trip from the inside. So, but I do think the 10 is pretty formidable here.
Yeah. So you said the same thing. So real quick on the 1, any other thoughts? The one thing I actually watched a couple replays just to see how this horse ran. And it seemed like it was sort of a, mid-pack, maybe sitting off. So if there's some speed up front and this one takes to the US, obviously had as a jockey who knows the course. So do you think this one is a solid win contender, or was just hey, there's a Euro, it's got Rispoli, let me take a shot with it?
No, because I think Nashua is going to be a big play for a lot of people, and the Breeders' Cup, the Prix de Diane is a big prep for the filly and mare turf. It's a grade 1, and obviously the horse finished 16th. But if you look at the comment, she went to the lead.
Yeah,
and that was again 1 mile and 5/16, which is 2.5 eighths.
Yeah,
I know that because my math professor uncle told me.
Yeah.
But so that's a grade 1, and someone say, well, Paul, she finished 16th by 23 lengths. Well, okay, but there's a chance the other 15 might win this race too.
No, I agree.
You know what I mean? So I think she's a legitimate win candidate. You know, Drysdale doesn't look. I didn't do the deep dive, but doesn't look like he has tremendous numbers for the first time overs, but he is generally pretty good with Euros, I think. And again, you're picking up the top turf jockey on a horse who, in the mile, I think that's where you want to be there inside. I think she gets a good trip. So I'd be interested at 6-1 in this. I do like the 10 a lot, but I think at 6-1, this horse is interesting.
No, I agree. That's why I sort of looked at it. And real quick, we have to go because we have some segments coming up after this. But real quick, Kyle, on the 8, Rhea Moon, because you both of us will have this horse on our pick 5 ticket. Any quick thoughts on this one?
I mean, I just thought the same thing. I'm sure you're thinking as well. Just every single way through. Granted, again, definitely not as classy as a horse like the 10, but just improving, gets Juan Hernandez back up again. Lost to Graceland Gray a bit farther back, but I think the mile suits this horse and another D'Amato trainee on the turf. Take a shot at probably a good price, 6-1.
Yeah, no, I agree with you here. So let's jump to, since we've been talking about our pick 5 tickets, let's jump to our pick 5s. I'm going to go Paul, and I'll read it off first. So Paul's pick 5. And I see he right on the $50 number. Yeah, I thought we were going to get bad in this one because there was no Howard. I thought we were going to get a little funky. So Paul has 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 in leg 1 with 3, 5, 6, 8, 9 with the 4 singled in the third leg with 3, 9 and then 1, 10 in the last leg. Paul, what are your thoughts on this ticket?
I want to say that when I handicapped, is it possible the 5 was still in when I handicapped the race? I thought there was.
I didn't think there was I didn't see a scratch when I was looking, but I don't know if I paid attention. It could have just been gone.
Ironically, I left out the horse that you guys both have on top. And it's the only. So I clearly would not play a caveman leaving out only one. But I was, to be honest with you, Pete, I was 4 deep. And I wanted to hit the exact.
You wanted to hit that number, yes, I love it.
So I added a horse. So actually, the 3 was my add-on. I was 1, 2, 4, 6. But yeah, I think again, I'm very narrow at the end. And some would say, well, you're going 5 deep in a race with 6 horses. That's not smart. Hey, look, I've done not smart things before. I'll do them again. I do like the 4 a lot. And, I didn't want to go too deep in the last leg because, as we just talked about a few minutes ago, I think the 10 is really formidable. So how much do I want to spend trying to beat the 10? Like I said, I just added the €1. So there's my $50 ticket. That's probably what I will invest. I'll maybe go ABC, but this is a day to try to bet a little and win a lot. You don't want to go through a lot of your bankroll with some big races coming up next week, but now that Uncle Howard forced us to handicap it, I will be playing.
We'll do it. All right. I like it. All right. Let's go to Kyle's next. Let me read it off. Kyle has a $48 ticket with 1, 2, 6, 7 in leg 1, 3, 4, 5, 9 next. The 4 singled in the third leg, 3, 9 in the fourth leg, and then 3, 8, 10 in the last leg. So a couple similarities in that third and fourth leg from you and Paul. And then when we get to my ticket, the same. What are your thoughts, Kyle?
I was going to say, I feel like we're going to be pretty similar, everybody in the third and fourth leg. But I mean, just going with my top 3 picks, basically all the way around, added a few in the first 2 legs, starting with I believe the 2 or the 1 Charlie is that was my long shot. I think maybe it could catch a piece if the race holds up top. And then the second leg I went with the 4, added your top pick in that race, which is Handy Dandy for Peter Miller. So just again, reaching to get to that $50 limit. But just adding a few horses, I think, could maybe catch a piece if something happens.
Yeah, and I do think this one started to get a little bit chalky if you really looked at it. So you had to try and catch a price somewhere if you liked them. So getting it in at least 2 of the legs would be beneficial. So real quick we'll go to my ticket is, oops, that is not my ticket. This is my ticket. So I have a $40 ticket only. So I went way under the number. 2, 4 in leg 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5, 9 in leg 2, the 4 in leg 3, the 3 and the 9 in leg 4, and then 2, 3, 8, 10. I did go a little deeper in that last leg just in case they can beat Cairo Memories, and I liked a couple of the other horses, but not much different. Skinny in the first leg with the big chalk, but I thought because of some of those statistics. I didn't want to single that horse, singled the 4 in the third, and then the 3-9 seemed pretty logical in the fourth leg. So there's our pick 5 tickets. Now we're going to bring on our normal host on Thursday nights.
He's
Mr.
anything but normal.
Well, normal, in very, very minor sense. Here is Mr. Howard Kravitz back. Hey, what's up, Howard?
What's up, guys? Great job. I was listening while I was doing a little homework. I like, these are real nice stake races. And Paul, you mentioned it's New York Showcase Day. If
Monday.
you own a track, I think this weekend's a great time to put on a good show because obviously the Breeders' Cup, it's not going to happen the following week. So I think you guys did an excellent job. Really interested to see what happens to Santa Anita. Now, real quick, before Jim Miller comes on, I want to have about a 5 or 6 minute discussion with you guys, and we need to talk about Stable Duel. And this segment of the HHH Racing Podcast is brought to you by an awesome fantasy game. It is Stable Duel.
You've picked your power forward. Your all-star receiver keeps scoring. Now it's time to race across the finish line and put even more points on the board. Download the Stable Duel app and get in on the thrill of horse racing. Choose your horses, your jockeys, your track, and win thousands in daily games competing against other players. Move up the annual leaderboard and bring home real cash prizes daily. Get in the game with Stable Duel. Play, race, win.
Well, the first thing we want to do, guys, is take a look at the schedule coming up for Stable Duel. Of course, they're one of our fantastic sponsors here, Bremont, and everyone at Stable Duel. They do a fantastic job. If you're not familiar with Stable Duel, it's a fun fantasy game. You can easily download it on your phone. I know I play often. I know Pete and Paul are playing it some more, as well as Kyle. Let's take a look at the contest schedule, everyone, here real quick for the upcoming weekend. I'm going to go ahead and bring this down. Of course, some of this has already happened. But tomorrow, Friday, for those of you watching live right now, at Keeneland, they have a $40 contest. We've talked about this, guys. They do a great job of giving you different values to bet into based on your wagering dollars. So there's a $40 contest. Check it out, the $250 winner take all. So that's sort of fun. If you want to go high roller, $250, the winner takes the whole thing. Listen, if they get 10 people in there, it's $2,500. That's a nice little pool to take down. They also have a nice cheapo one, $5. You can also go in. And then they have Gulfstream, $100, and that's called a double up, which basically means the best you can do, if you're not familiar with that, is double your money. So you can go from 100 to 200. You can see there's a limit of 2 entries. Limit of 2 entries, the most you can put in there. Minimum of 6 total. You guys can also see the $40, you can do up to 4 entries. The $5 up to 3 entries. This is something that we've talked about, guys, before, where they are only allowing a certain number of entries. Great job by Stable Duel, because as we've talked about, the more entries you have, obviously, the better chance you have to win. And so it's not fair if you have 6 or 7 different entries compared to someone who has 1 entry. My question for everyone before we get to Jim Miller from Hawthorne, I thought we'd sort of spitball this just for about 2 minutes. As you guys know, with Stable Duel, if you lose the certain amount of lengths you lose by or win by affects the number of points that you can get. So if you win, you get 60 points plus the number of lengths you win by. Second place is 40 points minus the number of lengths you lose by. Third place is 30 down, etc. So this begs the question that I'm going to put on the screen right now, guys, and getting my tip of the day, which is you want to play races at distances or surfaces where horses are less spread out at the wire, right? Because if you finish second or third, you don't want to finish 10 lengths back unless you're facing Flightline. So, Pete, I'm going to ask you first real quick, because I don't know the answer to this question. I'm sure there are stats that we can look at. Which race, in general, dirt or turf, and what distance you think the races are spread out the most that you want to avoid? I know the easy answer is distance races I don't know though, because a lot of the turf races sort of come together at the end.
No, I was thinking of it backwards when you were saying it. If you're thinking of the best race to bet, I would think maybe sort of a little bit of a longer distance, maybe not like the marathon type, because sometimes those horses run away a little bit, but those sort of, mile to a mile and an eighth. So turf, sometimes you get those 4 across in those. So if you're closing, even if you finish third or fourth, sometimes you're a half a length behind in those races. You don't always see that on the dirt. Maybe like if you're betting during the week and you have sort of maybe less talented horses or, the lower level horses, maybe they're a little closer sometimes, but in some of the bigger races on dirt, sometimes you see the horses run away. So I think it's a great question. I just don't think I've thought about it when I played before.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it much until I realized that, it's something that we need to talk about. Paul, I'm going to let you talk. I see Jim Miller is texting you live as we speak. So, um, uh, Kyle and Paul, if you can just talk a little bit about what you guys feel. And again, you have to keep in mind, though, if you finish fifth, that's a problem. So it's that combination of you want to finish first top 3, but you also want to be too far behind. So it's tricky. Paul and Kyle, go and spitball that comment just for a minute.
Well, before you do that, Howard, don't we go congratulations to Bree Mott? Did you see her tweet from the other day?
I did not.
Oh yeah, I did.
Oh,
Yep.
yes.
Oh!
Congratulations.
Oh, wow. Wonderful.
Her
Wow.
tweet was taking a bit of time away from the Twitter sphere for good reason and find a hospital that has horse racing channels. She's watching horse racing.
No, I saw that, but I saw that, but I didn't know if it was like I didn't want to ask. I didn't know. Are we 100% sure that's hers? I don't want to sound.
Well, according to the comments, it is.
Mm-hmm. That's what I saw.
Okay, wow. Well, Bree Mott, congratulations. That's amazing. Congratulations.
So that's more important than what type of damn races to play in
No
stable.
question about that. I agree.
No, I absolutely turf race. How many turf? This would be great to bring their product to Europe, where the turf races end with 8 across the wire.
Yeah.
But I would say turf races, and probably a little longer. But there's plenty of turf sprints where they're right on the wire together. So I'd say in general, any turf races would be better to satisfy your question, Howard.
Did you guys happen to see on Twitter that the highest stable due points given to a horse happened this week? The horse won. I forget what track it was. The horse won by like 34 lengths,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and it got like I forget what the points amount. It was like 95 points or something. Did you see that, Kyle?
Yeah, I know. I saw that race too, but absolutely ridiculous.
It was unbelievable.
But yeah, I mean, Secretariat numbers really on that. But to answer your question, Howard, yeah, I mean, going with what Pete calls my division, the turf sprints, I think, is definitely where you can find those blanket wire finishes a lot of the time. And I think dirt routes, especially as you've seen at Keeneland these past few weeks, you just have horses that are just absolutely separating each other out. You'll have a field strung out by 20, 25 lengths. So I think dirt routes is definitely the one that's more likely to have a lot of spread, where and like I said, in my experience, yeah, it's generally you have a lot more close finishes in turf sprints. That's the way.
It almost seems like too you'd want to watch for a horse if you think a horse is really dominant. Like the Breeders' Cup Classic, if you were doing a stable duel that day and you don't want to touch Flightline because he's going to be too expensive, you maybe don't want it. Maybe in that race it doesn't matter; they'll be a little closer. Maybe you don't want to go against a horse like that, because you might lose by 8 lengths as opposed to in some of the other races where you shouldn't get a horse that gets that far away from you.
Right. And speaking of Keeneland, real quick before we end it, so I'm going to shout out myself. I have 2 horses going to Keeneland this Saturday. I have one in the first race in a maiden claiming race, and I have Jones Way, and I have Otago in the 5th race and $115,000 allowance on the turf. So
how they
I'm going to shout out myself. Otago is a 2-year-old. We're really high on him. He was second in the Laurel Futurity last time out. So,
yep.
And that was taken off the turf. So we're really high on him. Jones Way is our mare who's won. She's won like over 75K and she's never won a race. I think she's raced like 25 times and she hasn't won a race, but still, we love her. We'll get there eventually. Maybe this week, maybe this weekend's the weekend.
That's awesome. Well, good luck, man. That's congratulations. Hopefully congratulations on both. Howard, you got any news there? There's Jim.
Yeah, we got Jim Miller just checking a few technical difficulties, but I think we're ready to rock and roll in the back. Listen, it's been a great show, guys. It's been a full day. I know you already mentioned it, Pete, and I greatly appreciate that. We all appreciated for obvious reasons. Check out the show with Davey Lane, episode 197 on the Euros. It's already has, I just checked, it already has over 400 views. It's one of our best shows of the year that we have from a handicapping standpoint. Davey Lane was absolutely fantastic. So anyone watching live right now, please check out episode 197. But don't leave quite yet because we got Jim Miller coming on, guys. So Pete Visco, Kyle Roscoe, Paul Halloran, guys, have an awesome weekend. Paul, the serial horizontal player, don't spend too much of that Breeders' Cup money because I looked at the Breeders' Cup exotics. Holy crap.
I got a headache.
I hope you got some money in the bankroll for next weekend, buddy, because it is crazy.
I love
Guys,
those
have a
turf.
great
Love
night.
those turf bets, Paul. Love those turf. Those pick 4, pick 3 turf bets are awesome.
Absolutely. Guys, have a great night. Of course, we'll be looking for your power pick information later on, guys. Take care.
See?
All righty. All righty. There's our fantastic co-host, did a fantastic job, of course, while I was busy doing a bunch of other things. Without further ado, let's not waste any time. Actually, before we bring on our wonderful next guest and wrap up the show, we got to do a little promotion here, if I can find it. Here we go. This portion of episode 198 of the HHH Racing Podcast is brought to you by. Oh, I need the full screen. Oh my goodness, where is it? There it is. Let me try it again. It's brought to you by Hawthorne Racecourse, Chicago's hometown track. All right, let's bring on from Hawthorne Racecourse, the one and only Mr. Jim Miller. Jim, how you doing tonight? Sorry about the miscommunication, man.
Hey, it's understandable. It's busy. It's Breeders' Cup time, man. This is like the best time of year. I love it. You have a show like every single day going on, so you're working multiple jobs here, Howard. It's okay.
You know something about working multiple jobs, sir. So yeah, listen, you got to pay the bills. You got to do what you got to do.
Yep.
Jim, before we get into two really exciting races on Saturday at Hawthorne that I took a look at, and there's an open company race that is absolutely loaded with some serious horses. A great double to play for sure coming up on Saturday at Hawthorne. Got a quick Breeders' Cup question for you. I'm going to mention 3 horses. Who are you most surprised / most excited about based on the pre-entries? Latruska ending up in the Filly and Mare Sprint. Domestic Spending for Chad Brown coming back in a year-long layoff in the mile. Or Jack Christopher deciding to go to the sprint. Which one of those sort of caught your fancy, caught your attention, you're surprised most, interested in, etc.?
Jack Christopher, for sure, because you had some options there, and the horse has shown its versatility. But the horse is a little bit of a freak, I think, at whatever distance you're going to see. Sprinting, going the mile, wherever it's going to be. You talk about Domestic Spending. I mean, you have this history of these horses that have come back off these massive layoffs, and it's kind of been that Cinderella story type of thing. So that's really cool too. But Jack Christopher has been so good this year. Price-wise, I don't think I'm curious to see what you get price-wise out of some of these horses on Breeders' Cup, because that's the thing you talk about when you're compiling these tickets, when you're compiling pick 6 tickets, pick 4s, and all that. It's not like these are horses that should be 4 to 5 because they're the only stake horse in a race. Every single one of these horses is a stakes horse. Every single one of these horses is a superstar horse. You're going to find greatest stakes winners, Howard, that are 20 and 30 and 40 to 1. That's the beauty of the Breeders' Cup. But long-winded answer, Jack Christopher is the one I'm looking forward to the most.
I think we were talking about this yesterday on our pre-entries show. My guess, Jackie's Warrior. I'm going to go 4 to 5.
Yep.
Jack Christopher 2 to 1, and I think everyone else is going to be at least 6 to 1. It's going to be a weird board. Any thoughts on that as a morning line guy?
What I think that's fair. The question is, what's the pace scenario going to be in that race? I mean, is it going to be suicidal up front? You're going to have just ding-dong battle, and let's see who emerges clear in the end? Or is this one of those races that's going to be a complete fall apart and some massive price horse comes swooping on by? I don't know, because these are when you have 2 very talented sprinters, but they're kind of one-run type of horses. It does make it really kind of tough to figure out.
Yeah, there's not a lot of early. I don't think Jack Christopher can go with Jackie's Warrior.
I don't think so
Jackie's
either.
Warrior really go. So I think Jack Christopher is just going to set a length off. I think Jackie Warrior is going to lead. It wouldn't shock me. This is no great handicapping puzzle here, but it wouldn't shock me if they're just 1-2 around the track.
Right.
And maybe Jack Christopher is good enough to win. I personally don't think so. The sprint division, Jim, let's be honest, just not good this year.
No, and it's not. And let me ask you this. So question-wise, too, is this a different race because it's at Keeneland compared to if you're running this race on the West Coast or you're running at different other tracks? And the reason I say at certain tracks, I do think, especially on the big days, play a little bit more to a bias, a little bit more to a front-end type of bias. I think you have that quite often out on the West Coast. I don't know if Keeneland necessarily will play that way. I expect things to maybe play a little bit more evenly out there, and maybe that kind of tightens the gap between the two.
Yeah, I think so. The weather looks good. You know what, Jim? The last thing I'll say, we'll go on to Hawthorne. We talked about this last week. I looked at the weather. You never know a week out. It looks like it's going to it's going to be dry. It's going to be 70. It's really going to be unbelievably, unseasonably warm in Keeneland. I did saw possible winds like 15 to 20 gusting. We talked about this. Keeneland's one of those tracks too, Jim. There's not a lot of trees around the track. Like I've been there several times. I'm assuming you've been there. Watch the races, especially the one-turn races that could lead to some strange biases, whether it be speed or closers based on the wind. It absolutely can happen. It's something we all need to pay attention to.
Yeah, and you definitely do it. And it's played a huge factor at Hawthorne over the course of those last couple of weeks. But you're right, Keeneland kind of sits out there on a little bit of an island for the racetrack compared to everything else for the setup around there. But you're right. Yeah. There's not a whole lot blocking the wind. It's pretty wide open right there. And it kind of has it because the airport's right across the street. So it's not like you're going to have massive banks of trees around by any means. But you do have to watch because it definitely can play a factor there.
All right, let's go to the Hawthorne, Jim. Two great races on Saturday. An open company race. There's an Illinois bred sprint race. I'm going to quickly bring up, and we're not going to. I do have the PPs. We can do it much quicker though than we've done, for the Pick 5 show. And by the way, it felt awful.
Congrats.
The pick. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Listen, it's not exactly a life-changing score, but you deserve to hit it too because the sixth and last race was tons the best. But that's horse racing.
Can we touch on that just real quick on that race?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so here's the one thing that I actually loved about the race. So Gailey Posse was the horse I singled on the last leg of the Pick 5. The horse is a speed horse, horrible break out of the gate, but here's what I actually loved about it. You had a veteran rider in the saddle in Victor Santiago, and instead of freaking out when the horse missed a break and just rushing up there, going for a quarter of a mile, and then getting nothing, he gave the horse a shot. He allowed the horse to settle in, learn something, run the race, and the horse made a move to finish second there behind your winner in that spot. I like when you see that out of a veteran rider because a lot of these younger riders may have just pushed that horse along, said, this is where I think I have to be, and then they have nothing left for the lane. So I thought it was a really smart ride by Santiago. It was only good enough to finish second after that break, but it was something that I actually appreciated seeing that ride aboard the horse.
It was, and the rail horse who we talked about took a ton of early money. It took a lot of money. And I actually was alive to him on my own, my ABC bet, and that Pick 5 paid like $700.
Yeah.
That's one of those horses. I think it was 10-1 morning line, the one horse or whatever it was, and you had the correct morning line. Just got bet more than I thought. That played a lot bigger in the horizontals than it would have in the verticals. Yeah. So that's just a great example of that. Jim, race 6 on Saturday. I'm going to put it full screen here. Two fantastic races back to back. This one starts at 5:13. It's an allowance optional claiming for 62.5. The purse is juicy. It's 38,000. They're going 6.5. And wow, are these some really nice horses here? As you can see, including a bunch of open company horses. There's a nice Illinois bred, but I know you wanted to mention specifically a Minnesota bred who I'm very familiar with based on my association with Canterbury Park in the past. The number 7, Love the Nest, who's 5-2 for Joel Burnt and Constantine Roman is riding. This is a very salty allowance race.
Here's the thing. All right, at Hawthorne, you're not expecting to see John Ortiz show up for one thing, and he's got 2 in there. So Mucho is a horse that you definitely have to give consideration to, and he's got another horse in that race that's a little bit longer shot when you go a little bit further down. But think about this. We talked about this, Howard, time and again. Canterbury horses have raced very well at Hawthorne throughout the course of the meet. The 6 and the 7, Dr. Oscar and Love the Nest, are probably the two best sprinters that are Minnesota bred horses coming over to Hawthorne, and they get to duke it out in this spot. Dr. Oscar was really impressive in that last out on the front end, ran a big race in that spot. But here's the thing. You look at Dr. Oscar, you look at Love the Nest. I think Love the Nest is a little bit better of a racehorse, only for the fact that that last start on October the 15th, and Howard, we talked about it, that was a week where the inside was good. Speed was good. It was a week full of headwinds in the stretch. Everybody won on the front end on the inside except for Love the Nest. This was the only horse that made a wide move the entire week. It was a move from a little bit off the pace. And not only was it a big move, this horse, when it hit the top, it just absolutely emerged clear, rolled on by. It was an extremely impressive effort. You see a 92 speed figure. It probably could have been 95, 96 if the rider even wanted to get after it a little bit more. I thought it was an ultra impressive effort out of Love the Nest.
Dean G, how about David Cabrera coming in to ride, who's a very underrated jockey? The only thing I'm concerned about Love the Nest, this is a real quick turnaround. It's a huge buyer top and a quick turnaround. I suppose Joel Byrne, I mean, who might have doubted him? The horse is obviously feeling good, and it's a logical spot. But from a betting standpoint, I'd be a little bit concerned about that.
And that's the thing about it. You have to see what you're going to get price-wise, because everybody does love this horse, so it is probably going to get bet down a little bit. It brings horses like Dr. Oscar into the mix. It brings horses like Mucho on the inside into the mix. The one curious one might be the Illinois bred, the 4. That's WW Scout's Honor. This is a horse that has a whole lot of early speed too, but some familiarity with the racetrack, a big effort in that last out. And this is that year where you saw more horses run big numbers at FanDuel than you've ever seen, formerly Fairmount Park, only because you didn't have Arlington Park in the summer. So these horses didn't have those options to jump around a little bit. So you're getting a lot better horses racing down there in Southern Illinois and running these really big races. And now they kind of step up and they do get overlooked a little bit when it comes to the betting.
Yeah, that's a good point. They brought back the St. Louis Derby this year, which is really cool. I remember betting the St. Louis Derby years ago. The name is gonna escape me now. I don't know. I can't remember now. The first time they had it for like 300,000. There was a horse that I really enjoyed watching run. Anyway, that's okay. Hopefully they keep bringing it back.
I agree.
Let's talk about race 7, Jim. Race 7 is the Illinois stake. It's the Lightning Jet Stakes. Let me go ahead and bring up the Equibase here. They're going 6.5. Again, this is going to be about 5:36 Central Time, so about 6:30 on the East Coast. Again, it's a great double to play. $75,000 in the purse. Again, kudos to Chris Block and everyone associated with the Illinois horse racing to continue to allow these Illinois breds. And these are good horses. These are not just Illinois breds that just are in here for money. These horses can run. Kudos to everyone involved. You got a field of 8 here with the morning line favorite. I love the name. The number 7 WW Cookie Monster for Becker and Santiago. But this horse has got his hands full with some real nice Illinois breds here.
Yeah, scroll down a little bit. There's actually 10 in the race there because it's going to be key when we get to talking about these horses.
My bad. Excuse me.
No, that's okay.
I left off by accident. Sorry.
But you see these Scott Becker runners, the WW horses. WW Hotshot used to be a Becker horse. WW Cookie Monster is a horse that's very familiar with this racetrack. And here's the thing about it. You look up and down a field like this and you tend to wonder, is 6.5 furlongs going to be the deciding factor for some of these horses? Because WW Cookie Monster, 10 starts, 8 times first or second. But Huey Attack has run well over this track. Devil Eye has run well over this track. But I'm telling you, the horse that intrigues me so much in here, Howard, is the 9. Let's read the cliff notes. And here's what intrigues me. Look at the record at Hawthorne. 9 starts over the track, 8 victories for Read the Cliff Notes. This horse came off a year layoff into that last out and ran a gigantic race on the turf. Now they try 6.5 furlongs. If it was at 3/4, I would have said no shot. 6.5 with enough pace and a horse that seems so versatile, it might be worth a look because you might get a little bit of a price here.
Jim, we have to change the name of this horse to Read the Howard Notes. Did you read what I've got? I love this horse, Jim.
Okay.
I'm a sucker for turnbacks. This horse, there's plenty of speed to chase. Second off the layoff, there's 10 things I love about this horse. Are we getting your morning line 9-2? That's my question.
You might, only for the fact that people are going to bet WW Cookie Monster. Everybody bets Scott Becker horses. The horse that I wasn't sure about was WW Hotshot only because of the barn. But then you get Fast Jack, and Fast Jack is also going to take some money because that horse is coming in off a big effort in that last out.
Yeah.
So it makes me curious to see, because I just wonder if people are going to say, okay, is Read the Cliff Notes really a sprinter? I mean, this is a horse that's been at its best at a route. The horse just ran on the turf a couple of weeks ago. Again, it's a real quick turnaround. You and I both like it, so maybe we're going to kill the price a little bit on this horse. But even at 7 to 2, 4 to 1,
you. People don't listen to me, so I'm sure that you might kill the price. Me, I don't know.
I'm going to pick the horse in the race. I like Read the Cliff Notes. You get horses for the course, and here's the thing about it too at Hawthorne. You and I both know it's very tight turns. It's a very long stretch. It's a different surface than what you get at some other tracks, just for the complexion of the surface. Because, and I mean, it's going to be weird talking about granules of sand, but we're going to talk about granules of sand because Hawthorne is actually based on a little bit more of a winter surface. It's a little bit more coarse sand. Doesn't hold quite as much water because you don't want it to freeze up in the winter. Some horses handle that a little bit better than others. This horse clearly does handle it very well. The horse loves the racetrack. I think you get enough pace. And again, 6.5 furlongs, that added 16th of a mile could be enough for Read the Cliff Notes to get up in time.
Well, the last thing I'll just mention is I like to look at the early time form pace, as you know.
Yep.
And I know that they have a feature. I don't have it with me right now in the show, but they have a feature where they actually, put the horses on a proverbial, a picture of a track, and
Yep.
you can actually see the visual pace setup. But I don't have that with me right now. But you got Huey Attack 94 early, right? You've got Locomotor's not slow, 103
Right.
early. Fast Jack 118. WW Hotshot 114, WW Cookie Monster 114. So then that automatically drives me to the closers, who's either Devil Eye, who I wouldn't completely rule out, but I think it's a little slow and is an 8-year-old, and the best days are probably behind him, or Read the Cliff Notes at an 88, and this horse is turning back, and he's a little bit younger, and I think Julio's first call for Michelle, is that right? Over Roman,
yes.
I would assume.
Yes, yeah. Julio will ride a lot of these horses first.
So, that just draws me to one of those two horses. So you got to look at the pace situation. Jim, my general rule, 2-speed horses doesn't guarantee anything.
Right.
3-speed horses, now you're talking about possible pace setup. More than 3, I automatically look to pace collapse. It doesn't always work out that way. That's how I handicap. So, Jim, I'll put you on the spot. If you want to play a double, or anyone's interested out there playing a nice double, race 6 to race 7, you can either cold punch it or whatever variations you like. What do you like as a double here?
All right, so I am cold punching it. Love the Nest to Read the Cliff Notes. Those are the two that I'm going to play in there.
7-9, correct?
Yeah. And here's the reason why too, Howard. We talked about the weather at Hawthorne last week. Extremely windy, 30-mile-per-hour headwinds in the stretch. It was one of those things where it was really a front-end track. This week is going to be completely different. Temperatures are going to be right around 60. You're not going to have nearly the wind. It's going to hold a little bit more water. The track's going to even out a little bit. But the question that comes in, Howard, is how are riders going to ride the track? Jocks that are new to Hawthorne, and we have some new riders that are going to think, okay, this is still a speed track. They may push horses a little bit more, and some of these veteran riders may adjust. So you have to watch some of the trips that some of these horses get and how guys ride the races. Look at Chris Amy, look at Jareth Ludbury, look at Julio Felix, Constantino Roman. The guys that are there and have been there year after year, they may have an advantage over some of these guys that are a little bit newer to Hawthorne.
And you mentioned on Twitter, we've got we had a lot of rain last few days off the turf this weekend, correct?
Yeah, off the turf Friday, Saturday for sure. I walked the course this morning. It was still quite wet. We are moving the rail out to lane 3 with the hopes that we're going to be on there on Sunday, but I'm going to wait until Sunday to get a look at it. I like to notify everybody ahead of time for handicapping purposes, and I like to notify horsemen so they're not changing shoes, they're not treating with Lasix if they want to scratch out, or if they want to re-enter for a turf next week. So if I can make that call ahead of time, I'm going to do so. So definitely off Friday, Saturday. Fingers crossed we can be on Sunday.
And kudos also to Hawthorne for getting the PPs out early. As a handicapper experience like myself, I hate getting the PPs out only 2 or 3 days in advance. You guys send them out well in advance, so greatly appreciate. Jim Miller, really appreciate your time tonight. Look forward to we'll be in touch through emails and whatnot about what's going to happen next week. Of course, with the Breeders' Cup, we will be talking about Hawthorne at some point next week, we'll be in contact with you. Jim, have a great night. Thanks a lot. Appreciate
You
it.
got it, Howard. Take care.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. All right, that was Jim Miller from Hawthorne Racecourse. Again, does a fantastic job there, doing many things. The morning line, handicaps, interviews, walks the turf course. Maybe he'll serve you a hot dog and french fries in the concession stand. I don't know. He does it all, but thanks to Jim Miller. Everyone, this has been a fantastic show. It's been episode 198 of the HHH Racing Podcast. We covered Santa Anita. We covered Stable Duel. We covered Hawthorne. Rest up this weekend, get through your handicapping, be ready, because next week we have fantastic shows Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday on the Breeders' Cup. You do not want to miss it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.